Now see it, person to person, a weekly document for television, as told by the faces and voices of people in the news.
Part wants to make it clear Tina's concerns are Tina's concerns.
Oh, say, Margaret, sorry to interrupt, but you're up for re-election this year,
Yes.
right? So it's going to be a spirited debate, I suppose.
They always are.
Right, of course. And there's something I've been wanting to ask you for a while, which is, I spoke to Judge Johnson a couple of weeks ago, Charles V. Johnson, who's the head of the mayor's panel, and he said when Stamper was selected in 1993, he was the head of the panel that selected Stamper. that basically Stamper never revealed any of his nefarious activities that he engaged in as a patrol officer on the San Diego Police Department. So you were involved in doing the background check for Mr. Stamper for that appointment, correct?
I'm not going to answer
When
the
he was
questions.
appointed? You're not going to answer. Well, Ms. Pageler, just as a matter of record, did you know about any of these allegations?
Yeah, I see it.
Margaret?
I'm not going to talk to you.
We're discussing her need for additional staff, like Carrie said.
Well, call it plausible deniability, call it a cover-up. I'm not going to talk to you. She won't talk about whether or not the police chief was involved in Klan-like activities while wearing a badge as a San Diego police officer not so many years ago.
Any holes in my area that I haven't found already. I've just come to tell me.
You could ask him now, Margaret. Yeah, she could ask him now, but she's not bloody likely to. In fact, if she's never asked him, right? Plausible deniability is the chief component of what has to go on in protecting the chief, right? People dotting their I's and crossing their T's is not really necessary at all. The most negligent of background checks is considered completely adequate for ratification of a chief of police for the city of Seattle. So all of that
arenas, and who will also reach out to the community in the interest of building community credibility for this new position, will give us the needed expertise that will provide for both internal as well as external credibility. It will also free up an assistant chief to take over a new bureau that will be called Training and Accountability, in full support of what the mayor has just mentioned, in full recognition of our own belief that we do not provide enough training systematically for employees at all levels of our police department. So we're very, very happy about that development. I also want to say something that the mayor has said, and I want to offer this from a very personal point of view. I have been in police work for a good long time. I have, as a result of interactions with my colleagues in major cities across this country, heard stories of police misconduct. I have heard stories of systemic, deeply rooted police misconduct that are truly shameful in their scope and their nature. And I agree completely with what has been said by our expert panel and by so many others from the community and within our police department, that not only is the Seattle Police Department a clean and honorable police agency whose men and women conduct themselves professionally, it is a very effective police department. Great pride in the progress that's been made under my administration, in large part because I recognize the talents of the men and women around me and the extraordinary work that they do. But I also want to make very clear that this police department has for years worked very hard to earn the reputation that it enjoys, not just locally, but nationally. I'm very proud to have become a part of a police agency with that legacy, that reputation. Finally, I want to acknowledge my anxiety about getting back to the business of meeting the basic police mission in the city of Seattle. I get asked frequently, don't you get tired of the coverage, of the criticism? And the answer to that is, of course, yes. I've also made a personal decision to focus on my job, to work with the many talented men and women of the Seattle Police Department, to ensure that we stay focused on what we are here to do. Our commitment to implement these recommendations is real. Our commitment to marry them to existing accountability systems is authentic. And we will focus the needed attention on those accountability measures. And we must turn full attention to the World Trade Organization upcoming, to the
Somebody here want to help me out on that one?
I'd be happy to. I think what the panel recommended is that if I choose to overturn a decision by the OTA director, that I would have to have just cause for doing that. And obviously, I would put that in writing.
Mr. Mayor, a few moments ago, I had the opportunity at long last to pose a question to Ms. Pageler, and that question was, when Mr. Stamper was appointed in 1993, what level of disclosure was there on his part about his activities in San Diego, California, for instance, with his use of the chokehold, sir?
I can answer that.
As you know, Mr. Stamper
I
said,
don't know.
could you direct Mr. Stamper to answer that question at this time? He
I don't
apparently
know.
very aggressively used the chokehold on what he has said were over 100 victims of his, and yet he has never disclosed whether he came forward with disclosure when appointed to Mayor Rice and the panel that appointed him. So could you direct him to answer that question at this time?
I don't think it's a matter that's a subject of this press conference. Maybe afterwards, when you don't have all the people here, you can talk to the chief privately.
Well, sir, he tends not to answer my questions. I think you probably have heard about that by now. Why doesn't he answer the question now? Did he disclose that he engaged in serial assaults against innocent persons while in uniform in San Diego as a patrol officer?
You have to find somebody else to act in place. I think the answer is not relevant at this stage.
He could provide an answer, sir.
Let's move on. The answer is no, I don't disclose this. Did disclose that, but Margaret, you were there, you went through the interview process.
I think by the time you get through all the double negatives of
You might get
Mr.
it
Lee's
tricky.
question, you don't know what the answer.
Right.
Did he disclose that he
Richard, I
engaged in
think you've
serial
had-
assaults against innocent persons? Why is that so difficult?
Marshall, to change the
Ms. Pageler, may I ask, have you had a chance to formulate a response to the question? It's obviously become something of an issue since I posed it to the mayor and the chief. So did you in fact ask Mr. Stamper about his career in San Diego when you were on the committee to appoint him? Ms. Pageler? Can you offer any comment as to what level of investigation you did in doing the background check on Mr. Stamper, Ms. Pageler? I mean, he was appointed chief of police, and in fact, specifically what you told me in November of '93 was, we've seen that he can talk the talk, now we want to see if he can walk the walk. So did you find out how he walked the walk in San Diego? Did you find out about his serial criminal activity in San Diego when you appointed him?
Back into the back seats.
Okay.
Ms. Pageler?
Yeah. That's more convenient for me. I can drive around with somebody else.
We'll take that as a no comment. Margaret Pageler, up for election. Just a couple of months. She doesn't seem too worried. Cop car in the handicap spot. Let's see. Disabled persons. Seems to be a handicap spot. That seems to be a cop car. Cop car in the disabled spot. Look at that.
Oh my.
What a scandal. Yeah, that's a cop car. Wonder whose it is. So, Mr. Shell, I don't want to make you uncomfortable here, sir, but given that I did raise this as an issue...
You raised it before.
I know, sir, and at that time you seem not to profess a great familiarity with the issue. I think you called Susan Painter one of our society editors, sir? Officer, this car is illegally parked. Look. Look. It's a police car illegally parked.
God bless you. Are you through here? Do you want to help me with
Mr. Stamper? Mr. Stamper, I think all of us heard the mayor of the city of Seattle direct you to answer my question after the press conference was over. Are you prepared to do that now, sir? Sir, my question on the subject of your admitting that you engaged in serial felonious assault of innocent persons while a police officer in San Diego.
Excuse us, Richard, please.
Sir, the mayor directed you to answer this question.
Let's go over here.
Why are you touching me?
It's okay, Nick. All right, I know.
Sir, the mayor instructed you to answer the question. Are you going to follow his directive on this? Sir, did you fully disclose the extent of your activities in engaging in felonious assault on a serial basis on innocent persons while a police officer in San Diego? Did you disclose that in 1993, sir? When you were appointed? Did you, sir?
Richard, don't go on
Sir, the mayor
Don't go
instructed you
into
to answer that question.
Don't go into the street.
Yeah.
Don't go into the street, Richard.
Mr. Mayor, you have an opportunity to answer the question. Mr. Police Chief,
Bye, Richard.
the mayor instructed you to answer the question, sir. Is it your prerogative to overrule the mayor's directive? And so there you have it. The measure of the man. The measure of the man. This is the measure of the man. Stamper still defends the use of the chokehold, its use in some instances, but admits, quote, the way it was used back then, pervasively and indiscriminately, it was clearly not justified. I, in fact, used it that way easily 100 times. PI, April 24th, 1998. Author Susan Painter, not one of our society editors.
chiefs were, the city agencies were there. We walked up down the alleys and discussed everything.
Oh, say, you're Nancy McPherson.
No, it isn't.
Ms. McPherson?
No, in fact, they had a drive-by shooting.
Oh, say, Ms. McPherson.
So no, it's amazing.
Thanks anyway.
Man, good seeing you. Okay, excuse me.
He did some one-on-ones this morning, and then and he met with the audit team, so that was helpful for an hour. And
Oh, say, Officer McCammon.
Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Pretty good, how are you?
See you, Tina. Take it easy.
just trying to get some good footing in that.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Officer Pam, where's Norton
Richard, I'm
Stamper
gonna,
today?
I don't know. I don't keep his schedule. I'm
You don't know where he
gonna
is?
kind of finish up here. No, I'm surprised you don't know where he is, Richard. Dang it, you keep track of him better than I do.
I assumed he'd be here, actually. This is the Community Policing Conference, right?
Nope, not a conference.
It's
Just
the
a chat.
it's the Community Policing Brown Bag Lunch.
There you
right?
go. That's more appropriate.
Isn't Community
Thanks,
Policing
Lori.
his great,
Thanks.
See ya.
say, Officer Pam,
See ya,
isn't
Richard.
Community Policing his great contribution to humanity?
If that's what you want to title it, Richard, I guess you can.
But he thinks that his community policing program is a national model
He thinks
for
that?
community policing all over the nation, right?
Okay, if that's what you think.
Why do you think he's in absentia today?
You know what? I'm not going to speak on Chief Stamper's behalf.
Oh, well, you are the chief spokesperson for the Seattle Police Department.
I'm
are you
one
not?
of the police department spokespersons. I'm not the chief's private spokesperson, no.
Who is the chief's private spokesperson?
You know, I would appreciate you didn't really stick that in my face, okay?
Well, you're running away,
I'm not
Mrs.
running,
Spokesman.
Richard. If I ran, you wouldn't see me. Sure, good to see you.
Oh, say, Mr. Locke, Professor
sir.
Locke.
Sir.
Say, I just wanted to have a moment to speak to you about the report that you participated in, the
Yes.
Mayor's Special Panel.
Yes.
And, you know, I met with
Goodbye,
you all
Kay.
at the, I met with the whole panel at the Seattle Art Museum when you
recall.
had your conference at the Maloney Room there. And on that occasion, I drew your attention, the attention of the whole panel, to the April 24th interview of 1998 that Chief Stamper did with the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. And in that interview, he confessed to all sorts of methods of police brutality that he himself participated in on a regular basis while an officer in San Diego. Could you tell me, did that report, did that interview with Mr. Stamper play any part in your deliberations about
Why should it have?
police conduct?
Why should it have?
Well, to quote Mr. Stamper, he says that he participated in life-threatening acts of brutality on a very regular basis while in uniform in San Diego. In fact, I have the article right here
I
with
know
me.
the
and-
quote, but I don't understand the question. What's the problem?
Well, what Mr. Stamper
What
said
did you
was
expect us to do?
he used excessive force, including the sleeper hold, to choke out violent suspects. And he says it was used pervasively and indiscriminately. It was clearly not justified. I, in fact, used it that way easily 100 times.
So what's the question, Mr. Lee?
Well, sir, do you think that that sort of statement by Mr. Stamper may have a negative effect on effective policing here in the city of Seattle?
I doubt it.
Well, you're familiar with the Michael Ealy case, are you not?
I am.
So Michael Ealy is a citizen who died under highly mysterious circumstances. His family asserts that he was the victim of excessive force, very specifically a sort of sleeper hold type pattern of injuries. So when the chief of police sends the signal that this is the sort of thing that he participated in while in uniform, don't you think that encourages other officers to go out?
Of course not. That's an insane comment.
That if
What the chief did was to acknowledge that this was a past practice in policing, one that obviously he does not condone, one which clearly he's unhappy about. But it's also one that happened 20 years ago.
Well,
I
he
don't
doesn't really
understand.
specify precisely.
Well, you know it happened 20 years
But
ago.
sir, are
I
you
don't
saying
know
that
why you-
my observations are insane, or Mr.
Yes,
Stamper's
your observation is insane.
But it's also, wouldn't you say, insane to take an innocent person and practice the sleeper hold on
Of
them?
course it is, and that's
Right.
been a practice that has been abandoned in policing for the past Lord knows how long.
Well, except,
So I don't
sir,
understand why you're raising it now.
the Michael Ely case. Michael Ely died under precisely those circumstances.
And when did that happen?
This year, in January.
So we have an isolated incident 20 years ago.
An isolated incident of a murder, sir, this year. You're preventing me from getting in this elevator?
Well, it's full right now, sir.
It's not full. It's got 5 people.
It's full.
It's got 5 people in it. What's the capacity in the elevator?
We're going to close the door.
Sir, I'm engaging in a constitutionally protected activity.
I think Mr. Locke wanted to go down.
Mr. Locke is a public figure, and you put your hands on me, and you had no right to do that, Officer Krotsky.
Kotsky.
Kotsky, K-O-T-S-K-Y.
K-O-U-T-S-K-Y.
Yeah, it's so hard to read those little labels you have.
Here's my business card.
Why did you put your hands on me?
I was just making sure that the elevator could go down.
Sir, you put your hands on me. You certainly could have allowed me to enter the facility without any problem at all. Do you understand why I have a problem with police touching me when they're not authorized to do so? This has been a life-threatening problem for me, so I don't take it lightly. Okay. And by the way, you have no right to protect any public figure from questioning when a reporter is engaging in a constitutionally protected activity. Your actions were clearly unconstitutional. Oh, sure. Call me insane, right? It's an insane observation that Michael Ely was killed. Officer, why do you think Michael Ely was killed? What's the police department's
I've got work to do.
official
I
word
can't
on
really
this?
talk to you today. Are you going to go down the elevator?
As the official spokesperson of the police department, I think this is your work, isn't it, Officer McCammon?
Not with you right now, no.
Oh, I see. You're here to inform other media, but not Channel 29.
I don't see any other media here, Richard. Do you?
So where are you rushing off to do this work?
Well, I have an office that I work in.
Oh, I see.
You've been
Now,
there.
the police
so
department has an
big surprise.
official line on Michael Ely's death. And what is that official line? Does it have something to do with mental illness and drug abuse? Assertions which his family denies? You know, Officer McCammon, this is a funny way for a chief spokesperson to conduct themselves.
Why, Richard?
And Norm Stamper is an advocate of the sleeper hold, the choker hold. He actually still believes that the choker hold, the sleeper hold, should be used on civilians to subdue suspects, or perhaps persons of
Were you a
interest.
storyteller in your other life? Because you are pretty good at creating
You are one of the
real
principal
interesting, inaccurate
spokespersons.
things.
Oh, really? Would you like me to read it directly from
Richard,
the
you
text?
can read anything you want. You just
Norm Stamper still advocates its use under certain circumstances. That's what the article says. The choker hold, the sleeper hold.
And did you write that yourself?
Susan Painter wrote it.
Oh, and we all know that Susan Painter knows everything, right?
Norm Stamper
Richard, I'm going to ask
himself
you one more time to keep
issued
the
a
camera on my
statement
face.
asserting the accuracy of this article a week after it came out. Do you understand?
Whatever you say, Richard.
Well, it was in the PI.
Whatever you say. If it's in the PI, it's got to be fact, right?
Stamper admits that he used excessive force, including the, quote, sleeper hold, to choke out violent suspects. The controversial hold cuts off the carotid arteries, rendering the subject unconscious. When drugs are involved, it has caused death. Stamper still defends its use, in some instances, but admits the way it was used back then, pervasively and indiscriminately, it was clearly not justified. I myself used it that way easily 100 times. Now, are you asserting that
I'm not
this is in
asserting
any way
darn thing.
inaccurate? Well, perhaps you could recite for me the police department's
I'm not gonna
official
recite
position
anything for you.
on the subject of the sleeper hold. Does the Seattle Police Department make use of the sleeper hold?
Richard, you're
Does
the
the
one with all the
department-
facts. Go crazy.
Does the department, independent of its chief, assert the right to use
Hi,
the
Ray.
sleeper
How you
rule?
doing?
Ma'am, how are you?
We're still riding the elevator up and down.
yeah?
Having a really good time.
Last room. One, please.
What about fabricating reports, Officer
You ought to know
McCammon?
about fabricating.
I think that the chief of police should know about fabricating reports.
I bet you do.
He's admitted that that was his practice while in San Diego.
Richard?
I think you know that for a
I hope you're
fact, don't you,
having a
Pam?
good time. I don't know anything about
Well, Officer
facts.
McCammon, I think you should familiarize yourself with
We're
the
getting off.
history of the
Well,
chief of police.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
So, Officer, one more time, could you tell me
Richard,
what is the department's
I just want you to
position?
know if you bump me with the camera, I'm not going to be happy.
Well, you know, you've already used force against me, Officer
Have I?
McCammon,
Oh,
when you were
gosh, I
completely
don't think
unjustified to do
You
so.
felt force, Richard. Yeah.
Oh, I fell for something? Is that it? I fell for some sort of a ruse? Some sort of a setup for a false arrest? Is that what you're saying I fell into? Because this is something you do, Officer McCammon? You engage in setups for false arrests? So there we had Officer Pam doing her thing. Officer Pam is apparently these days a woman of few words and many actions. And you understand why I was directly informing the officer of his illegal actions against me. You know, you let these people touch you in an unauthorized way, and touching then very rapidly can become chokeholds and slamming of one's face down into the pavement and everything else. So, when them police start touching you, understand that them touching you becomes a very Bill Clinton-like situation. You know, it then becomes very debatable as to who is touching whom and who the aggressor is. So by all means, tell them coppers to keep their fingers off. That's my advice. And here we go to the show. The jury wait on the 7th floor of the courtroom. I'm told there's a literal gaggle of so-called journalists up there waiting it out. The visual continues, huh?
Didn't miss a thing.
You guys get paid by the hour?
No comment.
For sports, it makes it almost like a 400 millimeter.
$4,000.
So it increases your telephotos too, which can be an upside.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a serious.
But there's also a little delay when you cut the shutter.
Pat, can I ask you a quick question? You
Yes.
used a specific sum of money in your closing argument to the jury. You said he took 11,000.
At least
Where
11,000.
did you come up with the number 11,400? Oh, sorry about that. And the number all the way through have been basically 10,000, except you had introduced exhibits. But in closing arguments, you said at least 11,400. Where did that come from?
Okay, that was based on the $10,000 that was put back, plus the fact that Mr. Davis, who had a regular cash machine habit or practice of anywhere between $700 and $900 a month did not hit the cash machine for 2 months. So conservatively, 2 months times 700 is $1,400 more dollars. And the argument was that he did not put all the money back, but rather that he kept some of it, and it was at least that much.
You're not putting an upper limit on it.
Well, sure, it wouldn't be something silly, but based on what we see in there, he could have taken maybe as much as $2,000 or $3,000 more, but nobody's saying that nobody argued that it was more than that.
Do you consider it possible that he actually did find the $10,000 on the second, only took $1,400, and thus it was only second-degree theft?
No, because of what was argued about, or all the things that show that what happened on the second was a skid or was concocted by Davis.
Well, Mr. Sainsbury, on that point, this is obviously a theft case. And as you concluded the final arguments, you asserted that there was much more money involved than $10,000. So it's not just a theft which was then somehow counteracted by returning the money. Money, in your argument, was stolen. So what in fact happens to Sergeant Cameron, who was involved in the conspiracy of the theft now?
That's you're assuming a whole bunch of things that have not been demonstrated, and that's a whole separate issue
Have you
has already been decided by my office.
That you will not prosecute Cameron?
Well, at least at this point, absolutely not. And if there's any change in that, that would be subject to a very, very careful review in the prosecutor's office.
But you say that Cameron acted as a lookout. You say in your concluding arguments, you also say that Cameron wanted to handle it a different way, meaning that he wanted to steal the money and then they decided to return it. Your concluding arguments also assert that there is money that was taken, that was not returned. Doesn't that mean that Sergeant Cameron was involved in a theft and that he kept some of the money?
The question is going to be whether or not there is a reasonable doubt about his conduct. Remember, he's acting as a manager and a supervisor here. There's absolutely no evidence that he obtained any money, at least at this point, and that's why he is different from Detective Davis, unless evidence otherwise should emerge.
But isn't that really for a jury to decide whether it's provable beyond a reasonable doubt?
No, because we will not prosecute a case where we don't. Our office's filing standards say that we will not file a case unless we believe a jury could reasonably conclude that the person is guilty. And we don't see that much evidence at this point. That's
you believe
the
that
decision
money was
that's already
stolen?
been made.
Sir, you believe that money was stolen?
By Detective Davis, yes.
Why would not they have split it? Your whole case depends on this squad thing. The squad thing is stealing money and splitting it.
You can't go to a jury with speculation.
But the squad thing was a part of your case in this particular prosecution.
I think I've said enough, but I appreciate the questions. Take care.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah. You want to hold all the old back? Part of
Was that what it was? Was it the policeman?
Oh, come on.
That bad guy that's
Oh,
money.
you know what? That is terrible, Vicky. Why? You don't know any good.
Yeah, he did.
No, and like
She's fixing him up.
No, they didn't.
It's out at the jury now. Not yet. Okay, so what do we have? We have Mr. Sainsbury making a very bold assertion about his reasonable doubt as to the guilt of Sergeant Cameron. Where did that come from? That's why we're here. Sonny Davis played a very small part, as far as we can tell, if anyone can be said to have played a small part in the Kurt Cobain homicide investigation. But Sergeant Cameron was the supervising sergeant. So as it pertains to our particular area of interest in this series, which is the Kurt Cobain homicide, what you have is Sergeant Cameron being let off the hook. Even though, as Mr. Sainsbury, the chief prosecutor, says, or he's the chief of the fraud division, he was acting in a supervisory capacity. They're actually asserting here the same sort of old school cop type thing that is supposed to have let the whole gang off in the first place, which is that Cameron is protecting his buddy and his subordinate, and this is just some benign avuncular activity. And believe me, I thought that they would stop short of some of the statements that they made. And for Mr. Sainsbury to be talking about X number of dollars being missing to the cameras here, I don't quite follow. They concluded their final arguments by saying that there was, Ms. Brenneman saying that there was more than likely, it was a considerable amount more than X number of dollars, $10,000, 11, 14, whatever number you want to throw around. The assertion of the prosecution, as you've seen, is that money was stolen. And somehow in this paternal supervisory role, Mr. Cameron, then Detective Sergeant Cameron, was supposed to have said, look, Sonny, this looks bad, so how much money did you take? Oh, $14,000, $25,000, $135,000, whatever the total stash may have been. Okay, you took that money, guess what, Sonny? We gotta put the money back. You keep $125,000 or whatever the figure was, and then we'll return $10,000. That way it will look good. That way no one, including Cloyd Steiger, will ever be able to say that we were guilty of theft. Because, you know, obviously such a large amount of monies were found at the scene. And the worst they can say is that we stole some money, returned it, and then it was found in full, which is preposterous to say the least. The additional preposterous assertion is that Detective Sergeant Cameron said, look, Sonny, I know you're going through some financial straits here, bud. I'll tell you what, that $1,000 you stole, or that $125,000, or that $350,000, whatever the amount was, you just keep that money, you know? You really screwed up here. You really put the whole squad into great jeopardy by your actions. However, we're going to let you keep the money above $10,000. We're going to let you just take that as sort of a tip for this act of gross misconduct. You just keep that money, Sonny, is what Don Cameron is supposed to have said, according to the assertions of the prosecutors at this point. What is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's impossible. And as I said to Sainsbury, his own case asserted over and over and over again that there was this squad thing that was happening. And the squad thing, by definition, is if we find a large amount of money, we're going to steal it and we're going to split it. The squad thing, in their argument, they could have said that the squad thing was just to cover up for a guy's screw-ups, but it was presented over and over again that the squad thing presumably meant that they keep the money and they split it. So how is it at this late date that Mr. Sainsbury can say with such absolute confidence that they're going to require additional information? Something new is going to have to come up, otherwise absolutely there is not going to be a prosecution of Don Cameron. It's utterly absurd. And, you know, the Seattle Times only a week or so ago was floating a rumor that was presumably based on some sort of nugget of info that the prosecutors gave them, that they were considering a Don Cameron prosecution. Steve, could you update us on that? Was it pure speculation that they were going to prosecute Cameron as you had it a week or so ago? He's not talking. But I asked him about this last week, and then he made a beeline over to Brenneman, and Brenneman stood up and said, there is a difference between guilt by preponderance of evidence and guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So they're bringing this whole case on the basis of it's beyond a reasonable doubt provable that Davis is a thief, but somehow there's some mitigating factor here that says that Cameron wasn't. Come on. The guy didn't act as a lookout, as they said in their closing arguments. The guy wasn't involved in arguing that there was more than one way of handling this thing. That's the direct evidence that is presented by Steiger, that they were talking about splitting the money. And the prosecution asserted over and over and over again that that was the case, as indeed they asserted over and over and over again, particularly with the ATM withdrawals coming to a halt when he came upon this stash of cash in his financial records, that there is still outstanding money that was never accounted for or returned. And we're supposed to believe that Don Cameron put his whole thing, his whole career, his reputation, and everything on the line to cover up for a guy, and then he let the guy steal the money. Or that there was this squad thing out there and somehow Steiger, or rather Davis, held back on revealing to Cameron that he had stolen more than $10,000. So, you know, if they get their guilty verdict, which is certainly not at all locked in, the evidence is very strong. It's very hard to believe that any reasonable person would vote to acquit. But if they get a hung jury, I can see the possibility of this not being retried. I think that's pretty classic for police agencies being prosecuted by their friends, the prosecutors, that if a hung jury comes back, they'll just say, the people of the County of King aren't going to invest additional resources in trying to prosecute this a second time. After all, it's only a theft case. It's not first-degree murder, so we're going to go back and look for some other crimes to prosecute with our spare time right now. So if they don't get their guilty verdict, which is certainly, absolutely an outstanding possibility, the fact is that they can be called into question for not being vigorous enough in asserting their case. For instance, Ms. Brenneman, in her concluding arguments, was talking about Ramirez and Boatman being very uncomfortable, but at least they told the truth about the case. So she said. Well, boola boola, babe, you know. They're supposed to brief the witnesses, you know. It's not like the witnesses show up here by surprise. They know the witnesses are coming. They can have prior communication with their witnesses, obviously. And for them not to tell witnesses to be fully forthcoming and to understand that they are there to prosecute the case since they know he's guilty is a considerable oversight. And may I add that the biggest oversight in briefing someone to understand that they are there as a prosecutorial witness would have to be Captain Cindy Caldwell, because you know, maybe we'll get into this a little later, but Cindy Caldwell was extremely unpersuasive, sitting up there saying, I don't know, over and over again. She did not appear in uniform, and she did not appear dressed as a cop. She appeared dressed as someone whom unattentive jurors would not even recognize to be a member of the police force. And in fact, those that did understand that she was supposed to be a captain in the police department would still have a hard time understanding why she would show up into court with sort of a glib attitude that she had to answer questions, many of which she answered, I don't know. Cindy Caldwell should have been the strongest case witness for the prosecution's case, but in fact, she was the great witness in the prosecution's case because Cindy Caldwell just sat up there and sort of looked like this trollop at the head of a police department, and this will undercut the jury's faith that anything at all can be prosecuted fairly when the person who's there as the chief supervisorial authority doesn't even seem to be demonstrating the personality of someone in that position. And the reason she would have been so overwhelmingly powerful is that the defense is going to put on the Sonny Davis, the great detective and public servant argument, and that is above all what is supposed to exonerate him, that he's so above board that of course he would never participate in anything along the lines of a theft. But what Detective Caldwell, or rather what Captain Caldwell did in contradicting Don Cameron's evaluation of Detective Davis was demonstrate that there was a whole lot of lying going on and a whole lot of really bad police work, which they didn't bring visual aids in to demonstrate because that would have embarrassed the police department, although I think the prosecutor could have insisted on that, and they didn't. So the idea that Don Cameron gave Detective Davis the highest possible marks in his evaluation when everyone knew that he was totally screwing up in every possible way and did almost no work at all for 2 years, according to the prosecution's case, that should have been the thing that put over the whole argument. But it was significantly undercut by a lack of visual aids and this extremely bizarre demeanor of Norm Stamper, Police Chief Norm Stamper's hand-picked head of the Violent Crimes Unit to replace Farrar, who was also at the head of the Cobain investigation. His hand-picked person, Cindy Caldwell, was there to sabotage, in my view, the prosecution's case by acting like someone who really didn't know very much about police work at all, because so many of her answers came out, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And that's a little bit of Norm Stamper intrigue, if you want to interpret it that way, but also consider the fact that the prosecution didn't seem prepared for this eventuality. For instance, with the lack of preparation with visual aids. If Sonny Davis was preparing homicide cases that were described as thin and handwritten and not at all in the form of a report in a homicide investigation, they should have waved that under the jury's nose and said, you know, this is the kind of work or, you know, really bad work, really non-work that Sonny Davis did during his last couple of years, and someone who's living off of the salaries of provided by the taxpayers, that's doing little or no work for a period of years, is a person who's stealing as it is self-evident. And for them not to recognize that that would have been the thing that could have put over their case is certainly the sort of thing that leads you to believe that the prosecution has a certain reluctance to winning its case against a Seattle police detective. And if you think that argument has a hole in it, you just saw Mr. Sainsbury. Mr. Sainsbury just asserted that not only did they not want to win a case against Don Cameron, they're somehow in abject fear of even bringing a case against the now retired detective Sergeant Don Cameron, who is, of course, the real key to this whole case, and, of course, the Kurt Cobain homicide case as well.
Do you think this judge is going to allow Texas law to be used on the punitive?
And I'm Richard Lee, and thanks for joining us. We'll be back.